What's up, guys? Welcome back to Blue Ridge Silverhound. I'm your host, Sean, and I want to thank each and every single one of you for joining in on this beginner's clinic on IDing your currency, knowing exactly what you have. We're going like way to the beginning. I've probably done a not so organized video of something of this caliber 7-8 years ago. Now we're talking like a long time. So, I feel like it's probably a really good time to revisit this subject, only because with the coin shortage thing that's happening around, people need something to look for, okay, and look through and try and find, some pretty neat pieces of paper currency, money, dollar bills, 5s, 10s, 20s, whatever. We're going to take a look right at the very beginning, exactly what you need to know when you are getting into searching paper money. And, believe it or not, there's a lot of people that don't know all the denominations that are currently being circulated in today's commerce world. Okay, which seems a little silly to me, but we're just gonna go ahead and shoot from the hip by talking about Federal Reserve notes. That's kind of like the over-glorified term used to describe just your standard paper money that is out in circulation today. There are a couple other different types of notes that you guys have heard of. Silver certificates is another one, which we're not going to go into too much depth. Okay, the big idea is here identifying money that you could still obtain today, whether it's at the bank or when you receive it in change at your coffee shop or wherever you pay for something, with like 100 or 20, and then you receive change back and something just looks neat and you want to know more about it. Okay, so should be no big surprise, a standard dollar bill. Okay, and this is again a Federal Reserve note. It uses to exchange for goods and services, receive back in change. Everything on the front of the note is printed in black, with exception of the third print, which encompasses, let me grab a pen here, which encompasses the serial numbers, this green seal right here, this set of serial numbers, the black district seal, and then the numbers here, the 6, 6, 6, and 6. Now, with this note, as you can see, there's a little star at the end of the serial number, okay? And without going into too much depth, that just means that this is a replacement note. These were all printed independently from the actual run of notes. Like in this particular case, this is what they would call a F star block. All right, so it would be whatever the prefix letter is and then whatever the ending suffix of the serial number would be. Okay, in this case, it's a star. I have plenty of others that'll show a letter. Okay, those are standard notes. But for the block, there would be X amount of notes made. Some would say, well, I have a star note and a regular like FA block that has the same serial number. Yes, they could both coexist because you have a replacement that was made independently as its own complete separate run that has nothing to do with the FA block. Okay, they didn't produce F stars to be replacements for strictly FA block notes. It doesn't work out that way, and some people have kind of like a hard time comprehending that. So on the second print, you have a full green reverse. Okay, so that's what it should look like, with nice, healthy, wide margins all the way around. The front, has two printings. You got the initial first black print. This is part of what they call a subject sheet of 32 notes. So if you can imagine one large kind of like poster sheet sized paper that could fit 32 notes, and then they're all cut out, okay, and then collated into straps. And that's it. And then they get dispersed to, the banking system and so on and so forth. All right, so that's what that is. This is a much older 1934B $10 Federal Reserve note. Okay, this one is also a star. As you can see, the difference in the star shape and size is quite considerable from one to the other. Even the serial numbers on the older note is a lot taller. All right, so that's just a design change that has happened over time. And you know, there's really no rhyme or reason why the change happened. It may be to give the note a more I don't know, dignified appearance. I guess I don't know. That sounds dumb just to even say, but it's just a design change that happened throughout history. I mean, look at the seal size too, and actual design. This one has the little scalloped edges. This one is round, and it's a little bit bigger. Same with the green seal. All right, so that is what a replacement note would look like on a much older note. This, however, the 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s, okay, aside from the dollar bill, are all of your standard denominations that circulate today. Very rarely do you see some of the much larger denominations, like your $500 bill, your $1,000 bill. Okay, I could say probably 40 years ago, you were still able to find those at your local bank as people have been dropping them off. Those are generally notes that were used at one point during the 50s quite regularly and before that, previous to that. But this is a much older note, and we're actually going to, I guess, revisit something like this later, so I'll just put this right here. All right, so your silver certificate, and then there's also one other note that I don't have, but we're going to talk about that briefly. We're not going to talk about the silver certificate. Very seldom do you ever come across these through the banking system, but you'll know the difference between a silver certificate and a standard Federal Reserve note just based off of the color of the third print inking of not only the seal but serial numbers as well. This is all in blue. Okay, so the silver certificates were used to trade. Excuse me, man, the dust. Were used to trade directly for silver. Like, you could go into a bank and trade this one lonely silver certificate for a Morgan dollar at one point. But that's the difference. You could still use this today with a face value of $1. But if you did come across these, just know that they are completely obsolete. They're not traditionally seen out in the banking system today. The reverse color is virtually the same. The older note here, the silver certificate, is a little bit darker, but the margins are, you know, pretty wide on that one as well. All right, so that's that one. Now we're going to be talking about the more modern stuff, and then we're going to go back to much older stuff. So here is a current generation $5 Federal Reserve note, okay? The one thing that you want to keep in mind is the actual date. This is a series 2013. Now, there's not a 2014 series. There's not a 15, you know, as the years go by. It's not like regular minted coinage, all right? So let's go ahead and kind of separate those two out for what they are. But for the series 2013, these were actually being used and distributed for about 4 years. Okay, there is a 2017 series that has been released, and there is generally a series change when there is a change in the membership of the Secretary of Treasury and the Treasurer of the United States. So when those two are newly appointed into office, they will go ahead and change the series date. Okay, so 2017, you'll see Stephen Mnuchin's autograph as being the Secretary of Treasury on there, and then a completely different person here on the left side. So that's about the frequency in which you'll see the change in series. Okay, that doesn't mean that, again, there's no series 2014, 15, 16. It doesn't work out that way. It's simply a changeover when it comes to office personnel. Okay, but as you can see, this is what they call the colorized note. This is normally what you would see in the 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s in varying different arrays of patterns and counterfeit measures and things like that. The third print is still the same. Okay, on the higher denominations, you know, you still have the green seal, the serial numbers, this black seal, and then the L12, which is the district and the associated number for that district. L12 is San Francisco. It's the last in the line of districts, okay? Or Federal Reserve Bank, rather, okay? But it's still referred to as a district as well. All right, so you still have a first, second, and third printing on the note. Make sure you guys know that. All right, what we won't talk about are kind of like the minute, further kind of like collecting opportunities when it comes to currency. I'll actually do a separate video on that, but I have an example of fancy serial numbers. All right, so the first note you see here on the left, I just have them kind of overlapping, staggered. You have a 4-digit repeater is what it's called. So you got 7230, 7230 on the same number string, and it should repeat on the second set of serials on the same note. This one right here is what you call a low serial number. So when you have generally 5 leading zeros and then 999 or lower, that in the currency collecting community is known as a low serial number. Now, some would say, well, keep an eye out for 4-digit serials. Okay, those are fine too. But in terms of collectability, there are 10 times more 4-digit serial numbers than there are 3-digit serials. Okay, you could only go up to 999 on a low serial for a 3-digit. Okay, but when you get to 4-digit, it's quad nines. All right, so there's 10 times more of that particular serial number, low serial number type. Okay, and I come across them all the time, but that has its own set of collectible to it. Condition wise, when it comes to being able to collect the notes, people want a note that looks much more presentable with less wear and less folds than the other. Generally, even just a basic note with no star designation, replacement designation, no fancy serial numbers, no errors, nothing of that sort, in a lot higher condition, okay, probably more so graded like that one is there, will still be worth quite a bit of money. Okay, you would be surprised how many people actually take a regular Federal Reserve note, like out of a brand new BEP strap. They'll send it off to a grader like PMG, which is owned by NGC, or PCGS Currency, okay, which has undergone a brand new rebrand ever since the previous president, Jason Bradford, had left. PCGS has full rights and ownership to PCGS Currency. Now they're, redoing the grading for the currency collectors out there. Okay, not saying that the previous PCGS Currency grading was anything illegitimate or anything like that. It's still to this day a legitimate grading concept. If you do get a hold of those notes in those holders, I actually have one here in a second. But anyways, this is a much nicer note, but still, even in this condition, this is what's considered a VF. You could see actually the fold right down the center right there, which is standard. People will fold them right in half. They'll put it in their billfold or wallet or purse or whatever. They'll have a number of notes, all stacked together or folded together, things like that. That's just nature, common tendency when it comes to paper money. Okay, we all fold our money most of the time, unless you have a long wallet where you can just stick it in. But even still, after you close the wallet, it's still going to fold. But it's so incredibly difficult to have a note come fresh out of a brand new pack and have it retain its crisp, uncirculated nature. And that's why, a note like this in crisp, uncirculated, like 68, which is a very nice grade, but, is quite common, is a note that still sells for like $75 to $100. So theoretically, you could take a full 100-note strap straight out of a BEP brick and grade every single one. If they come out like 68 and higher, every single note will be worth quite a bit of money. Or you could sell the whole bunch for like, $2,000 and make many more times the amount of money off of the complete graded strap with successive serial numbers. Keep that in mind. The serial numbers will be sequential and consecutive, which also brings a little bit of collectible appeal to the currency people that do collect these. Okay, so there's that. Now the old notes prior to about 1926, 27 were a lot larger. Okay, so the notes today are what's considered small notes, small size notes. The one in the back, which is another Federal Reserve note, another 5 with Abraham Lincoln on the front, was the previous incarnation of what today's Federal Reserve note is, but it is much, much larger. I'm like thinking to myself, how did people handle paper money when they were literally probably 1.4 times larger than the standard note that we have today? And it's real simple. Okay, they carried billfolds, which are actually big old long wallets, and they can actually fit that size paper currency. Or sometimes they'll just have a whole wad of this paper money folded in their pocket, and nobody really thought anything different. Okay, so that's, the designs on them are a lot different, but generally you won't ever see something like this through your local bank. Okay, if you did, that would be a rarity, and more times than not, just based off of the sheer size of these things, it will gain a lot of attention to the tellers or the managers, that they'll either just buy them to keep them, or they will go send them off to get destroyed. Okay, and man, I could only imagine how many of these have been destroyed over their life cycle. All right, so that is sad to think, but again, this is a PCGS currency. This is an older PCGS currency under the Jason Bradford ownership or presidency for them. But let's go ahead and take a look at some more of the fives. We saw this $5 bill right there. That's the current brand new type. So let's go ahead and take a look at just kind of a timeline of the different notes. I figure we'll go ahead and start off with the newer. Okay, so we have what they call the big face colorized notes. There is even a non-colorized version of the $5 bill that was recreated or redesigned back in the early 2000s, but what the color hadn't been applied to the whole paper face of the note. And on Abraham Lincoln's profile, you actually had just a decorative intaglio print of an oval around his head. Okay, and that was about as fancy as it got. But prior to that, okay, you guys are familiar with this. This is what they call the small head, small size notes. And this is kind of like that generation of notes that people refer to. Now, the notes all look pretty much the same. Okay, this is a 50D series. Okay, and what I also wanted to point out, sorry, I'm so disorganized. So we have 4 notes here. Okay, and they're all 1950, but the series letter is all different. It wasn't until 1963 that they put the 1963 series that will go on to become a regular note for a number of years. Okay, so for 13, 14 years, they've used 1950. But as you see, when they add the letter to each of the series, what do you guys notice? The Secretary of Treasury has changed each and every single time. Okay, in this particular case, you still had Douglas Dillon right here on the CD series, but a different treasurer on those notes. Right, so the treasurers had changed during this changeover right here. But as you can see, they've used the 1950 date series in the course of 12 to 14 years. Okay, until 1963 when the infamous Barr notes had come out, BARR, who was the Secretary of Treasury during that time. A lot of things happening there that we could talk about in another time. Anyways, for the series, the timeline in which they circulated was about 3 to 4 years. And keep in mind, paper money does not last that long. Oftentimes, when you get to about year 10 for a lot of these notes, they get destroyed. Okay, just based off of the usage and circulation. But this is, see, as you can see, there's no change in this 12-year period. The inks are a little bit darker. That's based on saturation. But the small head notes certainly do stand out today, mainly for, as you can see on the first generation, 1950, you could see the difference. This black seal is more closer to the actual profile here than the newer $5 bill. So there's minor design changes year in, year out. Okay, so this is not like an error. Like, oh yeah, that looks weird because it's closer to Abraham Lincoln. No, it's not like that. That's just a design change. And then sometimes you'll get, see how this seal is slightly shifted to the right and down, and then this one's to the left and up. That's all within the BEP tolerances. Okay, so that's normal. And it's only when they overlap design, the shifted third print is overlapping the first print is when you have a very consequential error type. Okay. But as you can see, the notes are all the same. The inks are incredibly vibrant during this era. The blacks just seem more blacker. The actual profile of Abraham Lincoln is so much more darker and robust compared to what they used to look like. And then the reverse greens compared to today, and the intaglio design that you see here is second to none. Okay, simply beautiful set of notes. Okay, so we have the 1950s. That's about mid-century. Now, one of the earliest iterations of a Federal Reserve note that you'll come across is the 28s and 34s. All right, so what we have below is another changeover. We're going a little bit older, but these notes have been found in circulation. I have found a number of them, even in the last 10 years, okay, just by going to the bank and asking, hey, do you have some of these older notes? We're really not going to talk too much about value. Okay, value is very subjective sometimes, especially with the older notes that have a lot more wear. Okay, it's really, how presentable does it look? Does it have damage issues, pinholes, all that great stuff? But on this particular case, you can see that a few of the things that come to mind here when we look at this is the serial numbers dramatically different. The older note has taller numbers. The ink looks a little bit lighter. The seal is bigger. Even the number 5 in the first print is huge. It's so much bigger than on the newer note. Okay, and then take a look at this district seal right here. You can see the change. This one's much smaller on the newer note, and it's got the scalloped edge. This one right here is much bigger, even as the city for that particular district, which is D4. Cleveland is D4, and then you have the 4s. Okay, that one's also 4s also. But these are very nice, high-quality notes. They're like crisp unk and AUs that I have right here. But you can see the difference. You got Snyder here. You also have Snyder here. But the actual treasurer is going to be different on both, I believe. One is Julian, and the top one is Clark, I believe. All right, so that's going to be that. But is this the older? No, it is not the oldest small size note that you could find out there in circulation. But what is? Okay, I actually have an example, only this time it's a 20. All right, so we have the 34, and the series goes all the way up to, I believe, E or F. All right, so it goes from 34 to 1950. So a period of 16, 17, 18 years in which the 34 series was being used. Okay, so we could go a little bit older, which is a 1928, which is the very first design changeover to the small note. Okay, and these other notes, this other note I'm going to show you, these are at the bank. If you ask for them, ask for like the older notes with the older design. It's always good to have like a sample of one of the older notes. I would probably recommend using a circulated kind of like, VF fine type note that's worth about face value. But the note in front in this condition is worth about $30. That's not bad, but you guys need to know that that's how much it's worth. Now, this other note that I'm going to show you is worth about $150. And the big reason why is that this district seal right here with the big D in it, okay, save your jokes to the end, has a number, but it's still the same district. Cleveland, D4, although it doesn't say D on there, that change was made 5-6 years later when 1934 adopted, different design cues. The big denomination is still the same. It says 20, okay? The size of the serial numbers are all the same all the way around. But the change, they put a number in there. 1928, right there, 1928. And then you'll come across some notes with kind of like a lime green ink. Those are extremely desirable if you could find them. Me personally, if I came across a 50 or 100, like a 1934 with lime green ink, it doesn't matter what condition, those things sell for a lot of money. If you find them, make sure you guys keep them. But anyways, this is the oldest version of the Federal Reserve note that you could find out there today. Okay, there shouldn't be any reason why you can't. I come across older, small porthole notes quite regularly, and I have found basically every single version of the Federal Reserve note in the much larger denominations outside the dollar bill. And boy, it's a lot of fun. And there were some notes that I've sold for double face, triple face. The lime greens I sell constantly for 5 to 10 times face value, which is a nice bonus. If you're able to find the much older star notes with the larger stars, you know, kind of like what I showed you here at the beginning. So let me go ahead and put this 34 away. So the top is a 28, the bottom one is the 34B. Okay, so that was probably circa 1938 to 1940. It was pre-World War II. The ink color is the same, but man, take a look at that star. If you're able to find a star note on the previous, what I call fat number or tall number versions, the older notes, those are very collectible. Okay, like this one right here is not a perfect looking note, but it's worth about $150 in this condition. Okay, and those are, I mean, this is PMG. This is the grader I like today over PCGS. They're just easier to deal with, and the holders look way much better because they do a sonic seal on the very edge of each and every single note, whereas on the PCGS has an open top, and they put the actual information sticker up and fold around the top. So you could take a utility knife and cut this across, open up the holder, and take the note out, if you please. Whereas on the PMG style holders, you do actually have to cut the holders themselves in order to obtain the note out of there. All right, so, but I just like the sonic sealed look and appearance of this. I mean, these, you could take this note, throw it in a bathtub full of water and take it out, and it's not going to get anything on the inside, which is what I like. Okay, and the presentation is so much cleaner. I could stack these a lot better in a box when I have a bunch of them. But yeah, PMG, they're owned by NGC. So yeah, a lot of fun. A lot of fun to collect currency. Some people don't like currency because it's like fiat paper currency, and they're like, oh no, I'm all about silver. I'm like, guys, you don't understand. There's a lot of value associated with paper currency, much more so on a one-to-one basis. You could actually make more dealing in currency than you can in coins, which some people find it hard to believe, or they just don't understand or fathom how that all works. But trust me, boys and girls, yeah, I've done extremely well trading, selling, buying currency. It's just a lot of fun. All right, so anyways, hopefully I covered all of the kind of like basic stuff when it comes to collecting or even kind of like treasure hunting paper money. It's a lot of fun. This is a fun hobby. I complement my coin hunting and my coin collecting with paper money, and it just works out really well. This is a great fun hobby that has a lot of merits. And again, if you know exactly what you're looking for, you could again supplement your other types of collecting with what you see here, and you're gonna be blown away with what this direction of numismatics holds for you. So that's gonna go ahead and do it. If you guys have questions or comments, go ahead and post them below. Again, this is a very basic kind of like video showing you kind of like the design changes of the notes in the last 80 years plus. Again, you know, You got to crawl before you walk. That's why we didn't talk in depth of like run figures or numbers and values and all the stuff that I'm sure a lot of you want to deep dive and know more about. But don't fret, ladies and gentlemen. We will get there soon. So that's going to go ahead and do it. I'm your host, Sean with Blue Ridge Silverhound. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. Love you as always. And I will see you on the next video. You guys take care now.